The massive orbital station hung in the void like a jeweled crown, slowly rotating above the peaceful world of Terminus Prime. Inside its crystalline council chamber, 12 alien species had gathered for a meeting that would change the course of galactic history. The room itself was a marvel of technology, with walls that shimmered and shifted to display star maps, battle formations, and streams of data that flickered across transparent surfaces like schools of luminescent fish. The delegates sat in a wide circle, each species represented by their finest diplomats and military advisors. Some breathed oxygen like humans would, while others existed in sealed environmental suits filled with methane or liquid nitrogen. The Vrexians, however, needed no such accommodations. These reptilian warriors stood tall and proud, their scales catching the light from 1,000 holographic displays, their cold eyes surveying the chamber with barely concealed ambition. Warmaster Krell rose from his seat, his clawed hands gripping the edge of the speaker's platform. He was a terrifying sight, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in armor like scales that had turned dark green with age and countless battles. His voice, when he spoke, carried the authority of someone who had conquered 17 worlds and had never known defeat. "Honored council members," Krell began, his words translated instantly by the chamber's sophisticated systems into every language present. "Today we discuss a matter of great importance to the Empire and, indeed, to the security of this entire sector. I speak of the humans." A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing a small blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. The image rotated slowly, revealing continents and oceans, cities that glowed like scattered gems in the darkness of night. It looked peaceful, vulnerable. "This world," Krell continued, gesturing with one clawed hand, "sits at the intersection of 3 major trade routes. The system contains rare minerals essential for advanced shield technology. The asteroid belt alone holds enough platinum and iridium to supply our shipyards for a century. And yet it remains in the hands of primitives." More images appeared. Human spacecraft, clumsy and inelegant compared to the sleek vessels of the Council races. Space stations that looked cobbled together from scrap metal. Military installations that any first-year tactical student would identify as poorly defended. The other delegates leaned forward, their interest clearly growing. "The humans achieved faster-than-light travel only 93 years ago," Krell said, his voice dripping with disdain. "They purchased the technology from Ferengi traders, paying 3 times its worth. They have established colonies on only 19 worlds, most of them barely self-sufficient. Their military numbers 47 warships of varying classes, none larger than a standard destroyer. Their weapons are crude adaptations of designs they bought, stole, or reverse-engineered from more advanced species." A Celestian diplomat, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns, raised one translucent hand. "What of their defensive capabilities? Surely they have some means of protecting their homeworld?" Krell's teeth, rows of them sharp and white, showed in what might have been a smile. "Our intelligence operatives have mapped every orbital platform, every ground-based installation, every ship in their pathetic fleet. They rely on outdated missile technology and kinetic weapons. No energy shields. No quantum torpedoes. No phase disruptors. They are, in every measurable way, 2 centuries behind current military standards." The hologram shifted again, showing Earth's moon, Mars, and the scattered human outposts throughout the Sol system. Each one was marked with tactical assessments, weak points highlighted in pulsing red. It looked like a training exercise, not a serious military target. An insectoid delegate from the Chitterak hive chittered nervously, their compound eyes reflecting multiple images of the display. "Has anyone considered why the humans remain so backward? They have had contact with our civilizations for nearly a century. Why have they not advanced more rapidly?" Krell waved the question away dismissively. "They are simply inferior. Their minds lack the complexity for true innovation. They copy what others create but cannot improve upon it. This is why they remain confined to their tiny corner of space while the rest of us have built empires spanning hundreds of systems." The debate continued for hours. Some delegates expressed caution, suggesting that humanity be given more time to develop, perhaps even offered protectorate status under Council supervision. Others, particularly those allied with the Vrexian Empire, argued for immediate annexation. The humans, they said, were wasting valuable resources. Better that these assets be controlled by species who knew how to use them properly. Finally, the vote was called. One by one, the delegates made their positions known. The Vrexians voted yes, of course. The Shardborn Collective, the Deepborn, the Crystalline Accord, the Flame Speakers, the Silicon Assembly, All voted to approve the annexation. 8 species in favor. 2 opposed. The Chitarak abstained, their representative refusing to meet anyone's gaze, as if troubled by something the others could not see. The tally was announced. The annexation of Earth and its territories was approved by overwhelming majority. Krell stood once more, triumph evident in every line of his powerful body. The Vrexian Empire thanks the Council for their wisdom. Our fleet stands ready. 300 warships will depart within hours. We estimate human resistance will collapse within 48 hours of our arrival. Within 1 week, Earth will be under new management, and its resources will begin flowing to those who can use them properly. The other delegates offered their congratulations, speaking of the prosperity this would bring, of the efficiency of Council rule, of the benefits humanity would receive from being absorbed into their galactic civilization. No one mentioned the 17 other species the Vrexians had annexed in similar fashion. No one spoke of what happened to civilizations that resisted. Far across the galaxy, in the Sol system, humanity went about its daily business. Ships moved between Earth and its colonies, carrying cargo and passengers. Space stations maintained their orbits. Military patrols followed their regular routes. Everything appeared normal, routine, unremarkable. But in secure facilities buried deep beneath Earth's surface, in hidden bases on the far side of the Moon, in research stations disguised as civilian mining operations throughout the asteroid belt, humanity was anything but unprepared. They had been watching the Council for decades. They had been listening to every diplomatic channel they could access. They had been studying every battle recording they could steal, hack, or purchase from black market sources. And most importantly, they had been learning. The humans knew exactly who they were dealing with. They understood that the galaxy was not a place of honor and cooperation, but a brutal arena where the strong devoured the weak without mercy or remorse. They had learned this lesson well because it was a lesson humanity had been teaching itself for thousands of years, in countless wars on their own violent world. The trap was set. The bait had been taken. Now all humanity had to do was wait for their enemies to come close enough to spring it. The darkness of space rippled and tore like fabric being ripped apart. One by one, 300 Vrexian warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their hulls gleaming with menace under the distant light of Earth's sun. Each vessel was a masterpiece of alien engineering, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand the fury of stars. They arranged themselves in a perfect formation, a wall of death advancing slowly toward the small blue world at the center of the system. On the bridge of the ECS Defiant, Admiral Hannah Kim watched the enemy fleet appear on her tactical display. She was a woman of average height with sharp eyes that missed nothing, her black hair pulled back in a tight bun, her uniform crisp despite the tension that filled every corner of the bridge. Around her, 46 other human ships waited in defensive positions near Earth's orbit, looking tiny and insignificant compared to the armada bearing down on them. The communications officer turned to her, his face pale. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy flagship. It's being broadcast on all frequencies. They want everyone in the system to hear this." Hannah nodded. "Put it through." War Master Krell's reptilian face filled the main screen. His cold eyes showed nothing but contempt as he spoke. "Humans of Earth. I am War Master Krell of the Vrexian Empire, acting under the authority of the Galactic Council. Your world and all its territories have been designated for annexation. You have precisely 12 hours to surrender unconditionally. Power down your military vessels. Evacuate your orbital platforms. Prepare to receive our occupation forces. If you comply, your civilian population will be treated with the mercy befitting primitives who know their place. If you resist..." He paused, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Well, the 17 species we have annexed before you all tried to resist. None of them exist anymore. You have 12 hours. The screen went dark. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Every officer present knew what those words meant. Surrender meant slavery at best, extinction at worst. Resistance meant fighting an enemy that outnumbered them 6 to 1, with technology that supposedly outclassed humanity's weapons by 2 centuries. Admiral Hannah stood up from her command chair and walked to the center of the bridge. She was calm, almost relaxed, and this strange confidence spread to her crew. They had trained for this moment for years. They knew what was coming next. "Open a channel," she said quietly. "All frequencies. Make sure Krell hears this clearly." The communications officer nodded, his fingers dancing across his console. "Channel open, Admiral." Hannah looked directly at the screen, as if she could see through space to the enemy flagship. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. "Come closer." That was all. 2 words. Then she cut the transmission. On his flagship, Krell laughed, a harsh, grating sound that made his subordinates flinch. The humans were either suicidally brave or too stupid to understand their situation. Either way, it didn't matter. He gave the order to advance. The Vrexian fleet moved forward like a tidal wave of metal and death. They passed the outer reaches of the Sol system, where human mining colonies on distant rocks and ice went silent, their inhabitants apparently fleeing in terror. They passed Neptune, then Uranus, then Saturn with its beautiful rings that caught the light like scattered diamonds. The formation tightened, preparing for the brief battle they expected. They passed Jupiter, its great red storm eye watching them pass like some ancient god. Then Mars, the red planet that humans had dreamed of for centuries before finally walking on its dusty surface. The Vrexian fleet was deep in the system now, committed to their attack run, unable to turn back without losing face before the entire galaxy that was surely watching. They entered the asteroid belt, and that's when Hannah gave the signal. The first indication that something was wrong came when a mining station, on a large asteroid suddenly unfolded like a metal flower. Hidden panels slid away to reveal weapons that shouldn't have existed, railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to a fraction of light speed. The station opened fire, and 3 Vrexian destroyers simply ceased to exist, torn apart by kinetic impacts that released energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. Before Krell could even process what had happened, the trap revealed itself in all its terrible glory. The asteroid belt was alive with weapons. Dozens of stations that the Vrexians had dismissed as civilian mining operations were actually military platforms, carefully disguised and patiently waiting. Missiles streaked out from hidden launch bays, thousands of them, guided by sophisticated targeting systems that the humans supposedly didn't possess. They swarmed the Vrexian formation like angry hornets, overwhelming defensive systems through sheer numbers. The cargo ships scattered throughout the system suddenly showed their true nature. Their hulls split open, revealing missile batteries and energy weapons. These converted vessels weren't as powerful as dedicated warships, but there were so many of them, positioned at perfect angles to create a killing field. Earth's moon lit up like a newborn star. The craters that covered its far side weren't natural, they were blast doors. Hidden beneath that ancient rock were railgun emplacements, each one capable of hurling telephone pole-sized projectiles across millions of kilometers with devastating accuracy. The moon had become a fortress, and now it spoke with a voice of thunder. Even Earth itself, beautiful and peaceful-looking, revealed its teeth. Satellites that the Vrexians had catalogued as telecommunications equipment suddenly shifted in their orbits. Solar panels folded away, exposing weapon systems. Hundreds of orbital defense platforms, each one a compact bundle of destructive capability, began firing in perfect coordination. The Vrexian fleet found itself in a nightmare. They had sailed confidently into what they thought was a shooting gallery, only to discover they were the targets. Ships began dying, explosions blossoming in the dark like deadly flowers. Krell screamed orders, trying to restore formation, trying to focus fire on the human capital ships that were now advancing toward his fleet rather than running away. That's when the human fleet opened fire, and Krell realized with growing horror that those 47 ships were far more dangerous than their size suggested. Their weapons were precise, targeting command vessels and shield generators with surgical accuracy. They moved in patterns that seemed chaotic but were actually brilliantly coordinated, making them nearly impossible to target effectively. The Battle of Sol had begun, and within the first 10 minutes, 50 Vrexian ships were burning debris. Humanity had been preparing for this fight for 50 years, ever since their first contact with the galaxy taught them the most important lesson. In space, nobody could hear you scream and nobody cared if you did. Warmaster Krell watched his fleet die around him and finally understood the truth. The humans hadn't been backward. They had been patient, watching and learning while appearing weak and helpless. They had studied every tactic, analyzed every battle recording they could acquire, and prepared a welcome that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. The trap had been sprung, and the hunters had become the hunted. The emergency session began before Warmaster Krell's battered fleet had even limped back to Vrexian space. The crystalline chamber on Terminus Prime was filled with delegates who arrived in such haste that some had not even bothered with formal diplomatic attire. The mood was very different from the calm, confident meeting just days before. Now the air hummed with alarm, confusion, and for some species, barely concealed fear. Ambassador Clara of the Celestian Accord stood at her station, her crystalline body refracting the light into nervous patterns of color. Before her floated a holographic display showing the Battle of Sol in brutal detail. The recording had been transmitted across the galaxy by the surviving Vrexian ships, and every species with the technology to receive it had watched in shock as 300 warships entered the Sol system and barely 70 limped out. "This is impossible," muttered a delegate from the Shardborn Collective, their voice like grinding glass. "Our intelligence reports showed the humans had fewer than 50 ships. Where did these weapons come from? How did they hide an entire military infrastructure from our surveillance?" The Vrexian representative, a younger officer named Vex who had replaced the disgraced Krell, stood trembling with rage and humiliation. His scales were dark with fury, his clawed hands gripping the speaker's platform so hard that the metal groaned. "The humans are deceivers. They are treacherous liars who pretended to be weak while secretly building weapons of mass destruction. This cannot stand. The Council must authorize a full military response. We demand that every member species contribute ships to a combined fleet that will crush Earth once and for all." But the chamber did not erupt in agreement as the Vrexians expected. Instead, there was uncomfortable silence. Several delegates were reviewing their own copies of the battle data, their expressions growing more troubled by the moment. Clara raised one translucent hand. "Before we discuss further military action, perhaps we should understand what actually happened. The Celestian Military Academy has analyzed the battle recordings. What we have discovered is deeply concerning." She gestured, and the hologram changed, showing detailed tactical breakdowns of the human attack patterns. "The humans did not fight like any species we have encountered before," Clara explained, her melodic voice now edged with worry. "Look here." The display zoomed in on the opening moments of the battle. The first targets were not the closest ships or the largest threats. They targeted command vessels. Within the first 3 minutes of combat, they had killed or disabled 12 of the Vrexian fleet's senior commanders. This created immediate chaos in their chain of command. She advanced the recording. "Here you can see human ships using disabled Vrexian vessels as shields, pushing the wrecks into the line of fire to absorb shots meant for them. And here." She paused, and several delegates made sounds of disgust. "Here, a damaged human destroyer, its engines failing and life support compromised, deliberately rammed a Vrexian battlecruiser at full speed. The human crew sacrificed themselves to take out a ship 10 times their size." A delegate from the Peaceful Harmony Collective spoke up, their voice quivering. "That is barbaric. What civilized species throws away lives so casually?" The Chitterak representative, who had abstained from the original vote, clicked their mandibles together in a gesture of grim understanding. "Not casually. Effectively. There is a difference." The insectoid's compound eyes reflected the battle scenes in dozens of small images. "The Chitterak have been studying human history since first contact. We have been concerned for many years about what we discovered." "Then why did you not share this information?" demanded Vex, his tail lashing in anger. "We tried," the Chitterak replied calmly. "But no one wanted to listen to warnings about primitives who bought their technology from traders. Now perhaps you will listen." The insectoid gestured, and a new set of data appeared, human history compiled from their own records and broadcasts. What the Council saw made their previous concerns seem trivial. They watched recordings of human conflicts spanning thousands of years. They saw weapons of incredible cruelty and sophistication. They learned about something called the World Wars, where humans had slaughtered each other by the millions using industrial-scale violence. They discovered that humans had created diseases specifically designed to kill, had poisoned their own atmosphere as a weapon, had even split the atom, not for power generation but to make bombs capable of destroying cities in a single flash. "The humans have been at war with themselves for their entire recorded history," the Chitterak explained. "They have a phrase, survival of the fittest. They understand, at a level deeper than philosophy, that the universe does not care about fairness or justice. Only victory matters. Only survival counts." Clara pulled up more battle data. "Look at their tactics. They do not follow any recognized patterns of civilized warfare. They do not attempt to minimize casualties or fight honorably. Every action is calculated for maximum effectiveness. When they realized they could not match Vrexian shields in direct combat, they used kinetic weapons traveling at relativistic speeds. Simple mass and velocity, impossible to defend against with energy shields." She showed another sequence. When their orbital platforms were targeted, they allowed some to be destroyed, but only after evacuating the crews and setting the platforms to explode with maximum force when hit, turning each one into a bomb that damaged nearby Vrexian ships. They sacrificed assets deliberately, turning every loss into a weapon. "This is not how war is conducted," protested a delegate from the Silicon Assembly. "There are rules, protocols, accepted standards of military engagement." The humans do not care about your rules, the Chitarak said flatly. They fight to win. That is the only rule that matters to them. Vex slammed his claws on the platform again. All the more reason to destroy them now before they become an even greater threat. We must mobilize every ship in Council space and reduce Earth to radioactive ash. But now, finally, the other delegates were hesitating. They looked at the battle data with new understanding. They saw how the humans had studied their enemies, learned their tactics, and found weaknesses that nobody had even known existed. They saw a species that had been preparing for this confrontation from the moment they first learned they were not alone in the universe. How long? Clara asked quietly. How long have they been preparing for invasion? The Chitarak pulled up construction records that their spies had finally pieced together. At least 50 years. Maybe longer. Those hidden weapons platforms in the asteroid belt? Some of them were built within a decade of their achieving faster-than-light travel. They have been preparing for this since first contact. Because they knew, someone whispered. They understood what we were from the beginning. Admiral Hannah Kim had not waited for the Council to recover from their shock. While they were still analyzing what had happened, she had already authorized the next phase of humanity's strategy. Operation Prometheus, they called it, named after the ancient human myth of stealing fire from the gods. 12 Vrexian colony worlds and supply depots were struck simultaneously by human fleets that appeared out of nowhere, hit their targets with devastating precision, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The attacks were surgical, focused, and utterly ruthless. Military targets were destroyed, infrastructure was crippled, but civilian populations were left largely untouched. A clear message that humanity could have killed millions but chose not to. The message was clear. Earth would not sit and wait to be attacked again. If you came for humanity, humanity would come for you, and you would never see them coming until it was too late. When news of the Prometheus strikes reached Terminus Prime, the chamber erupted in chaos. Some species demanded immediate retaliation. Others called for negotiation. A few quietly began reviewing their own defensive capabilities, wondering if they might be next. The Chitarak representatives stood and waited for silence. When they spoke, their voice carried across the chamber with crystal clarity. We did not discover humanity. We awakened them. We threatened their survival, and now we are learning what it means to face a species that has been surviving against impossible odds since they first crawled out of the oceans on their violent world. The question is not whether we can defeat them. The question is whether we can survive what they will become if we continue this war. In the silence that followed, every delegate in that chamber understood that the galaxy had changed forever. The old order, where strong empires dominated weak primitives, had been challenged by a species that refused to accept their assigned role as victims. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, humanity was watching, waiting, and preparing for whatever came next. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Sol, and the Galactic Council was falling apart. The crystalline chamber on Terminus Prime, once a symbol of unity and cooperation, had become a battleground of angry voices and bitter accusations. The council that had existed for 3,000 years was breaking into pieces, and everyone could feel the empire crumbling beneath their feet. War Master Vex stood at the center of the chamber, his scales darker than ever with rage and desperation. Behind him, holographic displays showed the Vrexian Empire's humiliation, the destroyed colonies, the crippled economy, the rebellion spreading through their territories like wildfire. His people demanded vengeance and he would give it to them or die trying. 600 warships, Vex announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. The full might of the Vrexian Imperial fleet. And we will not stand alone. The Shardborn Collective and the Deepborn have pledged their forces to this righteous cause. Together we will crush the human threat once and for all. But the chamber was not filled with allies. Half the seats were empty. The Chitarak had formally withdrawn from the council 3 weeks ago, declaring neutrality and condemning what they called a war of aggression against a sovereign species. The Celestian Accord had followed, then 3 other species who quietly announced they would no longer participate in council military actions. Ambassador Clara, speaking for the neutral faction, addressed the chamber via hologram from her own world. The Celestian Accord will not contribute forces to this invasion. We have reviewed the evidence. We have studied human history and capabilities. This war is not just unwinnable, it is wrong. The humans did not attack us. We attacked them. They have every right to defend themselves. Coward. Vex spat at the hologram. The Celestians were once warriors. Now you hide behind words and philosophy while a primitive species threatens the entire galactic order. The galactic order you speak of is built on conquest and subjugation, Clara replied calmly. Perhaps it is time for a new order. One based on cooperation rather than domination. While the council tore itself apart with arguments, something else was happening in the shadows. Secret communications began flowing between certain council species and Earth. The Chitarak were first, their encrypted messages offering detailed intelligence about Vrexian fleet movements in exchange for a simple non-aggression pact. Humanity agreed immediately, and other species quickly followed. They shared tactical data, warned of planned attacks, and began building relationships that the old council would have called treason. The Vrexians launched their second invasion exactly 90 days after their first defeat. This time, 600 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, supported by 200 shardborne crystalline vessels and 150 deep-borne waterships that moved through space like metallic fish. It was the largest military fleet assembled in 50 years, and it advanced on Earth with the confidence of overwhelming force. Admiral Hannah Kim watched them come. She stood on the bridge of the Defiant, which had been repaired and upgraded with new weapon systems that made it twice as dangerous as before. Around her, Earth's fleet had grown to 200 ships, including captured Vrexian vessels that human engineers had reverse-engineered and improved. But numbers were not humanity's only advantage. 3 months was a long time for humans to prepare. They had used every single hour. When the enemy fleet reached Mars, they encountered the first surprise. Swarm missiles erupted from hidden launchers scattered throughout the asteroid belt, but these were not like any missiles the invaders had seen before. Each one carried a small artificial intelligence, a computer brain that could think and adapt. They communicated with each other, hunting in packs like wolves pursuing prey. When point defense systems destroyed one missile, 3 others adjusted their approach vectors to exploit the gap in coverage. Thousands of these intelligent missiles swarmed the enemy formation, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and adaptive tactics. Ships that had survived the first battle found themselves facing weapons that learned from their defensive patterns and adjusted in real time. Then came the kinetic kill vehicles. These were simple in concept. Just dense chunks of metal accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by massive railguns hidden on the far side of Earth's moon. But simple did not mean ineffective. When an object moving at 10% of light speed hits a spaceship, no shield in the galaxy can stop it. The kinetic energy release is equivalent to a nuclear explosion. 3 shardborne cruisers simply vanished, transformed from ships into expanding clouds of superheated plasma in the blink of an eye. But the most horrifying development came when human marines deployed from specialized assault ships. The invaders had assumed, if humans boarded their vessels at all, they would use automated drones or robots. Instead, they got Captain Deho Park and his boarding teams. Deho was a compact man with the build of someone who had spent his entire life training for combat. His powered armor made him look like a mechanical giant, bristling with weapons and tools designed for one purpose: fighting inside enemy ships where there was no room to run and no possibility of retreat. Behind him, 50 Marines in similar armor waited in the assault pod as it accelerated toward a Vrexian battleship. The pod hit the enemy hull like a bullet, its shaped charges blasting through meters of armor plating. Before the Vrexians could even respond, the Marines were inside, moving through corridors with practiced efficiency. They moved in teams of 4, covering each other with overlapping fields of fire, communicating through hand signals and helmet displays. The Vrexians had never fought like this. Their military doctrine assumed ship-to-ship combat at a distance. The idea of enemies actually boarding your vessel and fighting deck by deck was something from ancient history, a barbaric practice that civilized species had abandoned millennia ago. But humans had never stopped practicing it. On Earth's oceans, Marines had been boarding enemy ships for thousands of years, refining tactics through centuries of brutal experience. Deho's team cleared the first corridor in seconds. Vrexian warriors, confused and disoriented by the sudden breach, found themselves facing humans who moved like demons through the smoke and chaos. The powered armor made each Marine strong enough to tear through bulkheads with their bare hands. Their weapons were designed for close quarters: shotguns that fired flechette rounds, compact rifles that could punch through armor, and in some cases just knives and brutal efficiency. "Bridge is 3 decks up," Deho said calmly into his helmet comm. "Team 2, secure engineering. Team 3, weapons control. Move with purpose, Marines. Let's show them what happens when you threaten Earth." Throughout the battle, similar boarding actions were taking place across the enemy fleet. Human Marines were turning the invaders' own ships against them, capturing vessels intact or disabling them from within. It was psychological warfare as much as military tactics. The enemy fleet began to fear that any damage to their hull might result in armored nightmares appearing inside their ships. The Battle of Seoul raged for 18 hours. When it finally ended, the Vrexian fleet was shattered. Vex himself died when his flagship's reactor overloaded after human marines sabotaged its cooling systems. The Shardborn and Deepborn forces retreated in disorder, having lost nearly half their vessels without managing to destroy a single major Earth installation. But Admiral Hannah did not stop with defense. While the enemy fleet was still reeling from their defeat, she launched a counteroffensive directly into Vrexian territory. 200 human ships, supported by intelligence from their new Chitarak and Celestian allies, struck at the heart of the Vrexian Empire, their shipyards orbiting the homeworld of Vrexia Prime. Commander Miho Lee led the attack, his tactical genius turning what should have been a suicide mission into a devastating victory. His ships moved through the Vrexian home fleet like dancers, exploiting every weakness the humans had catalogued over months of studying enemy tactics. He targeted shield generators first, then engines, leaving enemy vessels helpless and drifting. It was surgical, efficient, and utterly merciless. When the shipyards began exploding, visible from the surface of Vrexia Prime, the Vrexian people finally understood what their leaders had brought upon them. The humans they had dismissed as primitive prey had reached out across the galaxy and struck at their heart, proving that Earth could hurt them anywhere, anytime without warning. Admiral Hannah broadcast her message on all frequencies, making sure every species in the galaxy heard her words. We didn't start this war, but we will finish it on our terms. Any species that attacks humanity or our allies will face the same fate. We don't seek empire. We don't want to rule you. We just want to be left in peace. But if you won't give us peace, we'll make sure you can't threaten anyone ever again. The message was clear and the galaxy heard it. Earth, once dismissed as a footnote in galactic history, had become a power that could challenge empires and win. The crystalline chamber on Terminus Prime felt like a tomb. Half the seats were empty, their absent occupants having abandoned the council in disgust, fear, or simple pragmatism. The delegates who remained looked diminished somehow, as if the defeats of the past 6 months had physically shrunk them. The great empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years was dying, and everyone in that chamber could feel its last breaths rattling in their chests. Ambassador Clara of the Celestian Accord stood at the speaker's platform, her crystalline form refracting the dim lights into muted colors. Gone was the confidence and authority that had once filled this space. Now there was only exhaustion and the bitter taste of failure. The Vrexian Empire has formally requested peace, she announced, her melodic voice flat and tired. Their military is destroyed. Their economy has collapsed. Their colonies are in open revolt. Warmaster Krell is dead, executed by his own people for the catastrophe he brought upon them. The empire that once controlled 200 worlds now barely controls 20. They have agreed to all human terms, including reparations and the guarantee of non-aggression. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Vrexians had been the second most powerful military force in the galaxy, feared and respected across hundreds of systems. Now they were begging for mercy from the primitives they had tried to enslave just months ago. The irony was not lost on anyone present. We must acknowledge reality, Clara continued. Humanity has proven itself capable of defending its interests with overwhelming force. They have also demonstrated remarkable restraint. They could have bombarded Vrexia Prime from orbit and killed billions, but they chose to strike only military targets. They are dangerous, yes, but they are not monsters. I propose that we formally recognize Earth as a sovereign species with full council rights, including veto power over military actions. It is time to end this pointless conflict before more lives are lost. The vote was called. Every delegate present voted yes. Not a single voice of opposition was raised. But everyone in that chamber understood the truth. This was not a vote born of respect or admiration. This was surrender dressed in diplomatic language. They were voting to give humanity power because they were terrified of what would happen if they did not. The formal invitation was prepared with all the ceremony and grandeur the council could muster. A delegation was assembled to travel to Earth and present humanity with membership in the most prestigious organization in the galaxy. They would be equals, they assured themselves. Partners in maintaining galactic peace and prosperity. Surely the humans would see the honor being offered to them. The delegation arrived at Earth 3 weeks later, their ships escorted by human vessels through the Sol system. They were brought to a space station orbiting Mars, where Admiral Hannah Kim waited to receive them. The station was new, built in the frantic months following the first battle, and it served as humanity's primary diplomatic facility. The delegation was escorted through corridors that were functional but undecorated, passing human marines in powered armor who watched the aliens with cold, evaluating eyes. The meeting chamber was simple compared to the grandeur of Terminus Prime. No crystal walls, No holographic displays showing the vastness of galactic civilization. Just a plain room with a table, chairs, and a large window showing Earth rotating peacefully below. Admiral Hannah stood waiting, flanked by Captain Daeho Park and Commander Miho Lee, two of the heroes who had humbled the galaxy's greatest military powers. Clara stepped forward, carrying a data crystal containing the formal invitation. She had rehearsed this speech many times, polishing it until every word gleamed with diplomatic precision. She spoke of partnership and cooperation, of the benefits humanity would receive from Council membership, of the prestige and protection that came with being recognized as a full member of galactic civilization. Admiral Hannah listened in silence, her face revealing nothing. When Clara finished, holding out the crystal like a precious gift, Hannah made no move to take it. "We've reviewed your council's history," Hannah said quietly, her words falling into the chamber like stones into still water. "We obtained records from your own archives, stolen by our intelligence services over the past year. We know what your council really is." She gestured, and a holographic display activated, showing a timeline stretching back 3,000 years. 43 species, Hannah continued. "That's how many civilizations your council has invaded, annexed, or forcibly integrated. You call it bringing order to chaos or guiding younger species to maturity. We call it what it actually is: imperialism. Conquest dressed in the language of enlightenment." The delegation shifted uncomfortably. They had not expected this level of research, this depth of understanding. They had assumed the humans, being new to galactic politics, would be dazzled by the offer of council membership. "You present yourselves as keepers of peace," Hannah said, her voice hardening. "But your peace is built on the graves of free peoples who refuse to bow. Your order is maintained through the threat of military force. Your civilization is a pyramid with the strong at the top and the weak crushed beneath. Earth declines your invitation to join this system." Clara's crystalline form flickered with distress. "But, you must understand, without council membership you have no protection. No guarantee of peace. Other species may attack you, and we would have no obligation to intervene." "We don't need your protection," Captain Daeho said, speaking for the first time. His voice carried the rough edge of someone who had fought in the corridors of enemy ships, who had seen war up close and personal. "We've proven we can defend ourselves. And if others attack us, they'll learn the same lessons the Vrexians learned." "Then what do you want?" Clara asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "If not council membership, if not alliance with us, what is Earth's goal?" Admiral Hannah smiled, a small, tired smile that somehow seemed both gentle and terrifying. "We want something that apparently doesn't exist in your galaxy yet. We want voluntary cooperation between truly sovereign species. We want alliances based on mutual respect, not fear or conquest. We want a galaxy where the strong don't automatically get to rule the weak." She activated another display, showing a new proposal that humanity had been developing for months. The Terran Coalition. An alliance of independent species based on mutual defense and voluntary cooperation. No mandatory military actions. Each member decides for themselves if and when to fight. No forced integration. Every species maintains complete sovereignty over their own worlds and people. No central authority that can override local decisions. True democracy, true freedom, true partnership. That's... Clara searched for words. "That's never been tried before. Not on a galactic scale. It cannot possibly work." "Why not?" asked Commander Miho Lee. "Because your council never tried it? Because you assumed the only way to maintain order was through hierarchy and control? We're willing to find out if there's a better way." The Chitarak delegation, who had been observing quietly from the corner, clicked their mandibles together in what might have been approval. "The Chitarak Hive wishes to join this Terran coalition," their representative announced. "We have studied humanity extensively. We believe their model has merit. At minimum, it cannot be worse than the system we have endured for 3,000 years." The Celestian delegation looked at each other in shock. Then slowly Clara nodded. "The Celestian Accord also wishes to join. We have grown tired of empire. Perhaps it is time to try something new." Over the next year, 15 species joined the Terran Coalition. Some were former council members who had grown disillusioned with imperialism. Others were species that had been conquered and subjugated, finally seeing an opportunity for real independence. The coalition established its headquarters on Mars, in a facility designed by representatives from all member species, where every voice carried equal weight. Ambassador Jaiwu Choi took charge of coalition diplomacy. She was younger than Hannah, with a gift for languages and an instinct for negotiation that had made her invaluable during the war. Now she turned those skills to peace, patiently building relationships with species who were suspicious of humanity's motives. Where the council had demanded obedience, she offered partnership. Where they had extracted tribute, she proposed fair trade agreements. Captain Yuna Han, one of the most decorated fighter pilots from the war, established the Coalition Defense Force Academy. Here, Marines and pilots from different species trained together, learning human tactics while teaching their own unique skills. The Academy became a symbol of what the Coalition represented, former enemies learning to fight side by side, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals defending shared values. 5 years after Krell's failed invasion, Ambassador Hannah Kim, promoted from Admiral to Earth's primary diplomatic representative, stood before the Coalition Assembly. The chamber was filled with delegates from 23 species now, each one independent, each one sovereign, each one choosing freely to stand together. "We didn't seek this," Hannah told them, looking out over the gathered representatives. "We just wanted to survive. We wanted to live in peace on our small blue world, exploring the stars and building our future. But when we were threatened, we fought back. And in fighting for our survival, we showed the galaxy something it had forgotten, that there's another way to live. That freedom is possible. That cooperation doesn't require domination." On Terminus Prime, the Galactic Council still existed, but its power was a shadow of what it had once been. Species continued to leave, drawn to the Coalition's promise of true sovereignty. The empire that had ruled for 3 millennia was crumbling, not through military conquest, but through the simple power of a better idea. Humanity had reminded the galaxy of something precious that had been lost across countless years of imperial rule. Freedom, once tasted, was worth any price. And now, finally, the galaxy was learning to be free again.